started with mail. Not a confrontation, not a scandal. Just mail. A pile of the usual nonsense. Credit card offers, a few grocery ads, and some envelopes we'd been ignoring for weeks. The kind of mess that collects quietly on the edge of your kitchen counter until one day it just tips over. And you tell yourself you'll sort it later. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just tidying. It was a lazy Saturday morning. Early November, gray skies, the kind that always made me want to do nothing except drink too much coffee and pretend football still excited me. Emily was upstairs getting ready for her Pilates class. She'd started going every Saturday like clockwork about 2 months earlier, always at 9 a.m. Always coming home exactly at 10:40 with a smoothie I never saw her drink. I picked up a crooked stack of envelopes, planning to toss half of them straight into the bin, when something slid out and hit the floor with a soft click. It landed face down, just a plain white card with a magnetic strip on the back. I bent down and picked it up. It was a hotel room key, the kind that comes in a folded sleeve with a logo and a thank you message printed in cursive. Boutique, upscale, probably not cheap. I turned the sleeve over and saw the name of the place. The Juniper in Wauwatosa. That alone made my stomach tighten. We lived in Madison. Why would a key from a hotel in Wauwatosa, over an hour away, be sitting in our kitchen? I looked closer. On the inside of the card sleeve, in neat handwriting, someone had scribbled, 2 breakfasts comped. Enjoy your stay, with a little smiley face. Underneath, in bold print, was the check-in date. Yesterday. My first thought wasn't suspicion. Not really. It was confusion, followed quickly by that uncomfortable, crawling unease that you can't quite place but your body recognizes before your brain catches up. A part of me wanted to believe it was nothing. Maybe she picked it up at work, maybe it belonged to someone else. But it was hidden, sort of. Not stashed away, but not openly placed either. The sleeve had been slipped between 2 envelopes, an electric bill and a flyer for a local roofing company. That didn't feel like a mistake. I stood there staring at it, running scenarios in my head. Maybe she went there with a friend. Maybe someone left it at her office. Maybe. I heard the bathroom fan upstairs turn off. Emily would be down any minute. I didn't know what I expected to find by holding on to it a little longer. But when she finally came down the stairs, barefoot, towel still wrapped around her hair, I slipped the card out of its sleeve and set it on the island countertop. She paused when she saw me. Her expression didn't change right away. Emily's always had a poker face, but her eyes narrowed just slightly. Just enough for me to notice. "What's that?" she asked, nodding toward the card like she had no idea. I held it up between 2 fingers. "You tell me." Found it buried in the mail. She stepped into the kitchen slowly, her tone shifting into something lighter. "Too light." "Oh," she said with a soft laugh. "That's from the company raffle. Remember? I told you about it. We were doing these random monthly giveaways, coffee gift cards, dinner vouchers, little stuff like that. I won a free night at the Juniper. You never mentioned it." "I didn't." She tilted her head. "I thought I did. Must have slipped my mind." "Kind of a weird thing to forget," I said, trying to keep my voice casual, though my heart had started to beat faster. She walked past me to the fridge, pulling out a carton of almond milk. "I didn't use it. I gave it to Amy from accounting. Her parents were visiting from Oregon. I must have grabbed it by accident when I was at the office." I looked down at the card again. "It says yesterday's date." She stopped mid-pour. "What?" "The check-in date," I repeated. "It's marked as yesterday." She turned around slowly, holding the carton loosely in one hand. "I mean, maybe they gave me a new one recently? Sometimes the prizes roll over if nobody claims them. You know how it is with internal raffles." Honestly, I didn't even remember I had that. I didn't say anything. I just kept looking at her. And then she went in for the K*LL. The shift. The deflection. "Jack," she said, in that low, calm tone she always used when she was about to flip the script. "Are you seriously suspicious over a hotel key card?" I shrugged, trying to play dumb. It just seemed out of place. "Out of place," she echoed, shaking her head as if I were the one who had dropped the card there. "You've been wound so tight lately." Between work, your dad's stuff, and not sleeping. I get it, but this? She gestured at the card like it was ridiculous. This is you being paranoid. I felt the shift happening, like water slipping through fingers. Her expression was firm, a little hurt even. She was making it about me now, my stress, my schedule, my inability to relax. I'm not accusing you of anything, I said, backing down instinctively. It just caught me off guard. She softened then, smiled even. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sound harsh. It's just, I'd hate for a random key card to become this whole thing when there's literally nothing behind it. She kissed my cheek, tossed the card back onto the counter like it meant nothing, and grabbed her gym bag. I'll be back in an hour, she said, already halfway out the door. Want me to bring you that banana protein one you like? I nodded, but I couldn't answer. My mind was too loud. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the card where she left it, half on, half off the edge of the counter. Something in my chest twisted. I told myself it wasn't worth it, that if I went down the rabbit hole I wouldn't like what I found. But I also knew myself. Once something doesn't add up, I can't let it go. I can't just relax like Emily always says. I picked up the card again and flipped it over. Tiny barcode. I took a photo of it. I didn't know what I was doing yet. Not really. But I knew this much. That wasn't the first time Emily had deflected. Maybe it was the first time I noticed. Maybe the others had been small enough to miss new perfume, turned off location sharing, half-finished explanations. But this time I had something tangible. Still, I shoved the card into the junk drawer with old batteries, faded coupons, and charger cords that didn't go to anything anymore. The place we put things we don't want to deal with. And then I sat down at the table, staring at the window, watching leaves fall in the backyard, wondering if that drawer was about to get a whole lot more crowded. After the key card, I tried to go back to normal. I really did. For the next few days, I told myself I was overthinking it, that Emily was right. Maybe I was wound up. Between deadlines at work, the never-ending calls from my brother about our dad's health, and the general numbness of getting through each week. Maybe I was just looking for something to blame. But even as I told myself that, something had already changed. It's like once the crack appears, you start seeing all the fractures that were there all along. First, there was her location sharing, or rather, the lack of it. We had been sharing our locations for years. Not out of mistrust, but because it made life easier. Meeting up downtown, checking if one of us was still stuck in traffic, figuring out when to start dinner. One night, I pulled up the map without thinking, trying to see if she was on her way home, and was met with location not available. I stared at the screen for a long time, refreshing it like it might be a glitch. Then I opened the settings and saw that she'd turned it off days ago. No alert, no conversation, just flipped the switch quietly. When I asked her about it later that night, she didn't even blink. "Oh," she said, barely looking up from her laptop. "I disabled that for battery life. My phone's been dying so fast lately. You've noticed that, right?" She smiled like it was no big deal, then changed the subject before I could follow up. At first, I chalked it up to habit. Emily was always great at redirecting things, steering conversations away from discomfort like she was born doing it. But after the key card and the location sharing, I started noticing everything. Every tiny inconsistency felt like a thread dangling from a sweater, and I couldn't stop pulling. Her phone, for example, used to be plugged in on the nightstand just like mine, but now it traveled with her. Into the bathroom, to the laundry room. Sometimes she'd come downstairs just to check a recipe, and bring it with her like it was an extension of her hand. I didn't snoop. I didn't look through it, but I started to feel like I was being trained not to ask. And then there were the chargers. They started going missing. At first I thought I was just misplacing mine, or that maybe we had a gremlin in the house chewing through cords. But I realized they only disappeared on Fridays or Saturdays. The ones I kept in the kitchen drawer or near the couch, gone. Then magically reappeared by Sunday night. One weekend I mentioned it jokingly. "We must have a charger thief." She looked up from her tablet and said, "Maybe we should start locking the doors better, without missing a beat." but something flickered in her expression, like she wasn't sure whether I was serious. Then came the perfume. Emily used to wear this soft, musky scent, something woody, warm. I loved it, but a few weeks ago it changed. Subtly at first. Floral. Lighter. Almost flirtier. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was a new soap or shampoo. But it stuck. I asked her about it one morning when we were both getting ready. New perfume? I asked, trying to sound casual. She paused, just briefly. Yeah, she said. Sample I got from work. Do you like it? It's different. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. I'll go back to the old one if you hate it. I didn't say that, I replied, but the conversation died there. A week later, I found the bottle in her gym bag. It wasn't a sample. It was full-sized. Expensive. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to seem paranoid. But it was all starting to build. Like puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit until you stepped back far enough. Client dinners became more frequent. Always on Thursdays. Never earlier in the week. Never with any specific names mentioned. Just vague answers like, a few people from the vendor side, or one of the firm's older clients who likes to drag things out. Once, I offered to drive her downtown since I was heading in that direction anyway. She paused in the hallway, one hand on her phone, and said, Actually, I already made plans to carpool with Molly. She lives closer to the venue. Only later did I remember Molly had moved to Texas 3 months ago. I started keeping a mental log. Nothing written, nothing formal, just a growing list of observations in my head. She had 2 dresses I hadn't seen before. One black, one deep emerald green. Both tight, both definitely not for work. I found the tags in the bathroom trash one night, like she'd cut them off before heading out. She never wore those dresses on date nights with me. She stopped inviting me to work events. Stopped asking if I wanted to join her when she went out with friends. Always had a reason. Always said it with a smile. You've been working so hard lately. You deserve a break. You don't want to sit through another accounting dinner, do you? It's mostly her friends, not mine. You'd be bored. It wasn't just what she said. It was how carefully she said it. And the biggest one, the cash. Emily almost never used cash. We were a debit card couple. But lately, she'd started withdrawing small amounts, 40 here, 60 there. Always from ATMs in nearby suburbs. One was next to a hotel just outside Middleton. I checked the bank statement twice to make sure. She told me she was at a late strategy meeting that day. I didn't know how to ask, or even what to ask. Because if I asked directly and she told the truth, what would I do? And if she lied? One Thursday night, I decided to wait up. Not in a confrontational way. I just said I had a long day and was crashing on the couch. She left around 6:30, kissed me goodbye, said she might be late. I watched a movie, then another, then sat in silence for an hour. She came home at 11:46. Hair perfect, lipstick still on. Not a hint of stress or exhaustion. She said the dinner went well, grabbed a yogurt, and went straight upstairs. I waited until I heard the shower. Then I checked her purse. I wasn't proud of it. I hated myself the entire time. But I found a receipt from a gas station near Delafield. One I knew wasn't near any of her client meetings. Timestamped 10:03 p.m. That was when the guilt started to leave, and something else took its place. Resentment, maybe, or certainty. Whatever it was, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I didn't know who. I didn't know how far it had gone. But something was happening. Something deliberate. And the more I looked back, the more it felt like a pattern, not a one-off. The disabled location, the missing chargers, the new perfume, the dresses, the Thursdays, the gas station. It wasn't random. It was a schedule. It was structure disguised as chaos. And it had been happening right in front of me. I wish I could say there was a specific moment where everything clicked, where I knew for sure. But it wasn't like that. It was slower. Messier. A dozen moments layered on top of each other like sheets of fog until suddenly I could see shapes moving in the distance. Shapes I didn't want to believe were there. The night I found the first real piece of evidence, I wasn't looking for it. Not actively. I'd stopped actively looking a few days earlier because I couldn't take the way it made me feel. Obsessive, paranoid, hollowed out. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Emily had gone to bed early, claiming she was exhausted from back-to-back client meetings. I stayed downstairs, drinking tea I didn't want and flipping through old emails on my laptop, trying to distract myself from the knot in my stomach. That's when I remembered the hotel keycard. I still had the photo I'd taken, the barcode, the logo. It had been weeks, but something told me to look again. I did a reverse image search of the hotel's branding, just on a whim, and stumbled onto something I hadn't thought to check: Google reviews. There were hundreds, but what stood out was a photo someone had posted of the check-in desk. In the background, clear as day, was a small screen that displayed security camera feeds. One of them pointed straight at the parking lot. I don't know why, but that image stuck in my brain. I called the hotel the next morning, told them I had stayed there and lost an item, asked if they kept camera footage. The woman on the phone was polite but dismissive. "We purge every 2 weeks unless there's a police report," she said. I thanked her and hung up, but the idea stuck with me, so I tried something else. I remembered that Emily had switched to cash lately. I pulled up our shared bank statements and cross-referenced them with the client dinners. Most of the withdrawals were made Thursday afternoons, always in the range of $60 to $100. And always near the same cluster of towns just outside the city: Brookfield, Wauwatosa, and Delafield. Quiet suburbs with mid-range hotels that catered to traveling sales reps and regional conferences. Places that wouldn't draw attention. I started building a private document. Just for me. I wasn't even sure why at the time. Maybe I thought I needed to see it all in one place to believe it. Dates. Locations. Withdrawal times. Her alibis. My notes. I didn't have names yet. No faces. Just patterns. But the patterns were enough to paint a story. And then came the break. Emily had left her laptop open on the kitchen table before heading to bed early again. Another headache. I don't know what made me check. Maybe I wanted to prove myself wrong. Maybe I was hoping I'd find nothing and finally feel the relief I kept pretending was around the corner. She wasn't logged into any obvious messaging apps. But her browser history told a different story. She had visited a Gmail account I didn't recognize. The username was generic, but the recovery email listed a first name: Mike. It didn't ring a bell at first. But then I remembered Laura's husband. Laura was Emily's friend from work. The kind of friend who wasn't quite close enough to show up in photos, but always came up in stories. I'd met Mike a handful of times. He was the quiet type. A lawyer. Always seemed like he'd rather be anywhere else during social gatherings. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't have access to the email itself, but the activity log showed frequent sign-ins during odd hours. And then, buried in the downloads folder, I found PDF receipts. 5 of them, all from different motels. All cash payments. All under one name: Laura C. Emily's friend. But Laura hadn't stayed there. Emily had. Because on 2 of the receipts, the guest signature matched Emily's handwriting exactly. I knew it like I knew my own. I didn't say anything that night. I copied the receipts to a flash drive and tucked it into my sock drawer. Slept next to her like nothing had changed. Which, ironically, it hadn't. The only difference now was that I knew what had been true for a long time. The next day, I called in sick to work and drove to one of the motels listed on a receipt. The clerk behind the desk didn't ask questions when I said I was trying to track down a lost item from a stay 2 weeks earlier. "I'd need to see an ID or booking confirmation," he said. "I don't have either," I told him. "But I think my wife was here with someone. I'm not trying to cause problems. I just need to know." He stared at me for a long time, then glanced around the empty lobby. "Look," he said, voice low. "I'm not supposed to say anything, but we get a lot of situations. You're not the first guy to come in here asking questions. Can you show me footage?" I asked. "Anything?" He shook his head. "Cameras are old school. We just have **TS from license plate captures. We don't store actual video." I gave him Emily's car model and plate number. He nodded slowly. Then, after a pause, turned his monitor around. There it was. A still image. 8:47 p.m. Thursday night. Emily's car, clear as day, pulling into the lot. And walking beside it, Mike. No mistaking him. Same receding hairline, same gray coat. The two of them side by side, not touching, but close. Too close. You want a copy? The clerk asked. Yes, I said. Please. He printed it. I paid him $100 and walked out into the cold October air feeling like someone had dropped a piano onto my chest. It was real. No more wondering. No more maybe. The key card, the perfume, the disabled location, it all led here. Emily was cheating. Not with a stranger. Not with a coworker. But with Laura's husband. Felt too surreal to be true. But the evidence didn't lie. I had receipts. I had timestamps. I had images. When I got home, I printed them all. Spread them across the dining room table like a crime scene. And then I sat down in the dark, staring at them. Emily got home late again that night. Another networking event. She kissed me on the cheek like she always did. Asked if I wanted tea. I said sure. She made it. Sat across from me. I waited. And then, slowly, I pushed one of the photos toward her. She didn't react at first. Just looked at it. Then blinked. Then slowly set the mug down. What is this? She asked. You tell me. She stared at the image of her and Mike walking side by side, silhouetted by the motel parking lot lights. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, she said, This isn't what it looks like. I laughed. Couldn't help it. You really gonna go with that? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Because I've got 4 more just like it. And receipts. And timestamps. And your signature. Her face went pale. She didn't deny it again. Not outright. It was a business dinner, she said eventually, barely above a whisper. Mike was helping me with Emily. She stopped. Don't insult me. Not now. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Suffocating. How long? I asked. She didn't answer. So I asked again. Her voice cracked. A few months. I nodded. Every Thursday? She hesitated. Then nodded. So it was scheduled. Regular. Planned. Methodical. Not a mistake. Not a moment of weakness. Pattern. A decision. Over and over again. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there and stared at the woman I thought I knew. And I realized she wasn't sorry it happened. She was sorry she got caught. The next morning felt quiet in a way I couldn't explain. Not just the absence of sound, but the absence of pretending. That artificial ease we'd both been faking for weeks, maybe months, was gone. We barely spoke. Emily moved around the house like a tenant, avoiding eye contact, her footsteps softer than usual, as if walking too loudly might crack the floor. She didn't apologize again. Didn't explain. I think she knew I didn't want her to. I didn't ask any more questions either. What else was there to say? I spent most of that day sitting in the garage, door open, watching leaves blow across the driveway. I stared at the rake I hadn't used yet this season, at the old cooler I kept meaning to toss. And nothing. The realization sat like lead in my stomach. She hadn't just cheated. She had strategized. She had coordinated nights, made up meetings, redirected conversations. She had coached her face to stay calm and her voice to stay sweet while she built a second life inside our first one. And I'd smiled through all of it, completely unaware. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't want rage. I didn't want a messy fight or screaming matches that ended in slammed doors and people taking sides. I didn't want to become the angry husband she could write off as bitter or unstable. No, I wanted precision. And if I was going to burn this house of cards down, I wanted to do it in a way that no one could deny. That's when I thought of Laura. I hadn't seen her in months. Not since a company mixer Emily dragged me to last spring. She and Mike had shown up late, dressed too nice for the occasion, claiming they'd gotten stuck in traffic. I remembered Mike making some joke about all the margaritas being gone and Laura smiling, but not laughing. The kind of smile that said everything's fine even when it wasn't. Back then, I didn't think twice. Now, I couldn't stop thinking about her. If Mike was cheating with my wife, odds were he wasn't covering his tracks all that well on his end either. And Laura, she deserved to know just as much as I did. So I took a risk. I waited until the weekend and sent her a message. Hey, this is Jack. I know this is weird, but I think we should talk. It's about Emily and Mike. I'm not trying to cause drama. I just think you might be seeing the same things I am. She didn't reply that day, or the next. But 3 days later, she called me. Her voice was calm, a little guarded. Hi, Jack, she said. I got your message. I think I already know what this is about. We met at a coffee shop across town the next morning. Neutral territory. I got there early and sat by the window. She walked in wearing sunglasses, hair tied back, looking like someone who'd been up all night. She didn't order anything, just sat down, folded her hands, and said, He's cheating, isn't he? I nodded. With Emily, she added, not as a question. Yeah. She took off her sunglasses, revealing red-rimmed eyes. I knew something was wrong, she whispered, but I thought I was being paranoid. I thought maybe I was just projecting. I thought the same, I admitted. We sat in silence for a while, two strangers connected by the wreckage of the same secret. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I've been keeping a list, she said, sliding it across the table. Dates, times, excuses he gave, things that didn't add up. I looked it over. Our timelines matched almost perfectly. Same Thursdays. I asked. Every one, she said. That's when the shift happened. It was subtle but real. We weren't just victims anymore. We were co-conspirators. We could confront them together, I said. Laura shook her head. No, too easy. They'll lie, cry, spin it around. We need more than a confrontation. I leaned back in my chair. Then what? We build something they can't deny, she said. No yelling, no dramatics, just truth. Delivered at the exact moment when the entire room is looking at them. Her tone was sharper now, focused, and I realized something about Laura in that moment. She wasn't just hurt, she was furious, and beneath that she was methodical. We get everything, she continued. Screensh *TS. Payments, GPS records, witnesses. I've got friends at the firm who've seen them out together. I can get statements. You? I nodded slowly. I've got receipts, photos, a motel manager who gave me plate snapsh *TS. Perfect, she said. We'll compile it all. For what? She gave a small, humorless smile. For the exact moment they feel safest. That's how the plan started. We met 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Always in public places. Always discreet. I brought copies of the motel receipts, the bank withdrawals, and the time-stamped photo from the parking lot. Laura brought chat logs, innocent on the surface but loaded with coded language once you read them closely. She also had a friend in HR who confirmed that Emily and Mike had overlapping out-of-office blocks on multiple Thursdays. Every month. Together, we built a timeline. One that no one could talk their way out of. We even went back further, rechecked old posts on social media. I found a picture of Emily at a client dinner from 5 months ago. She'd tagged a seafood restaurant, but the metadata on the image showed it was taken at a completely different place. One that showed up in Mike's expense report the same week. I stopped feeling guilty somewhere in the middle of our second meeting. Because by then, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. I think what surprised me most was how clear everything became once I let go of the idea of fixing it. I stopped analyzing the why. I stopped wondering if it was my fault. If I'd missed something. If I'd failed her somehow. That didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I'd been lied to, manipulated, used, and that it hadn't just happened to me. I have one more idea, Laura said during our final planning session. We were sitting in her car this time, parked behind a library like a couple of spies. She turned to me and said, Emily's firm has their annual reception next month, right? Yeah, I said slowly. She's on the planning committee. She's been obsessing over the venue. Mike's going to be there, Laura said. It's a work thing. So are a lot of other people they've been fooling. So? So we go. Together. I blinked. You want to crash the reception? No, she said. We don't crash it. We RSVP. She pulled out her phone and showed me the invite. +1s are allowed. You're invited. And I'll be yours. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was genius. You think that'll be enough? I asked. Not on its own, she replied. But it'll be the first crack. The rest. She held up a small USB stick. We'll make sure the rest gets into the right hands. And the fallout? She shrugged. Let it burn. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I finally felt like myself again. We shook on it before we left the car. 2 betrayed spouses. 1 plan. And nothing left to lose. There's a strange kind of calm that comes when the storm is no longer theoretical. Once we locked in the plan, my anxiety shifted. I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night anymore, drowning in questions. I wasn't rehearsing conversations in the shower or checking Emily's location just to torture myself. There was no more wondering, only counting down. Emily's firm held its annual reception at a sleek downtown hotel, one of those modern places with Edison bulbs, high ceilings, and curated wine lists. It was the event she looked forward to all year, the kind where she could play both queen bee and backstage boss, gliding between sponsors and coworkers, subtly reminding everyone who pulled the strings. She had been on the planning committee 3 years in a row, and this time was no different. She'd been talking about it for weeks: menus, seating charts, which higher-ups were flying in, and what color the floral arrangements should be. I let her talk. I listened like I always had, nodding at the right parts, asking questions she never thought I cared enough to ask. It was almost funny how easily I played the same role I'd been in for years. Dutiful, supportive, unassuming. But this time I had an agenda too. Laura and I finalized our roles the weekend before the event. We didn't meet in person, we were being cautious now, but we talked over a call that lasted 2 hours. No emotion, no rehashing. Just structure. Arrival should be exactly 15 minutes after start time, she said, voice even. That's when everyone important is already there. But things haven't gotten loud yet. People will still be watching the door. I'll make sure we're seen, I said. You think we should stick together the whole time? No, she replied. Separate as soon as we enter. Circle the room. Smile. You'll go to the bar. I'll head to the client tables. Let it breathe before we hand anything off. What about the evidence? It's ready, she said. Multiple USBs. Hard copies too. Some go in the gift bags. One goes straight to the VP's assistant. She'll make sure it gets passed around. Another will go to the firm's shared Slack. Scheduled upload. It was clinical the way she said it, like we were launching a product, not detonating 2 relationships. But that's what made it work. The less we reacted emotionally, the more control we had. This wasn't about screaming across a room or watching them stumble through an excuse in front of an audience. It was about silence, about giving the truth nowhere to hide. The morning of the event, Emily was unusually giddy. She floated around the bedroom in her robe, coffee in one hand, makeup bag in the other. Can you believe this is my 5th one? She said, not really asking. Feels like yesterday I was just helping with name tags. I smiled. You've come a long way. She kissed my cheek. Don't be late. I won't. What she didn't know was that Laura and I had already scoped the venue 2 nights earlier. Walked the perimeter. Checked the entrances. Found the best parking spots and visual sightlines. We even timed the lobby elevator to know how long it took to reach the mezzanine where the reception would be held. Every detail was locked in. The only thing left was to walk through the front door. Laura picked me up in a silver rental, clean, generic, impossible to trace back to either of us. She wore a simple black dress and no jewelry. Understated. Elegant. Controlled. You ready? She asked as I slid into the passenger seat. I nodded. Let's end it. We didn't speak much during the drive. The city lights passed by in silence. Both of us were steady, not because we weren't nervous, but because we were beyond the part where nerves mattered. This was the performance. When we arrived, The valet opened our doors without question. A staff member greeted us in the lobby, clipboard in hand. Names? Jack and Laura, I said calmly. He checked the list. You're all set. Enjoy the evening. As we walked toward the elevator, I felt Emily's world closing in one careful step at a time. The reception space was already filling up when we arrived. Music playing softly, glasses clinking, laughter hovering in the background like warm static. People milled around in curated outfits, name badges sparkling under chandelier light. And then, as we passed through the entrance, a moment happened. Emily saw us. She was mid-conversation with a vendor, her hand gesturing toward a sign placement, when her eyes flicked toward the door. I watched the exact second her expression froze. Her mouth stayed open for half a word longer than it should have. Her hand dropped an inch, then a tight smile, like she was seeing a ghost. Mike was standing near the far end of the room, drink in hand, joking with someone from operations. When he spotted Laura beside me, the glass in his hand tilted ever so slightly. Neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. We separated exactly as planned. Laura peeled off to the left, greeting a group of women who clearly recognized her but weren't sure if she was supposed to be there. I went to the bar, ordered a club soda, and kept my eyes forward. 10 minutes in, the first USB was handed to a receptionist who'd been on the planning team. Hey, Laura told her. Can you make sure this gets to Bridget before the slideshow starts? Bridget was the VP's assistant. Sharp, always curious. Known for accidentally leaking internal gossip on Slack when she felt the story deserved sunlight. The second USB went into a client's swag bag, intentionally the wrong one. He'd open it at home, wondering what kind of data this was. He'd find screensh *TS, calendars, license plate captures, a final envelope with printed photos, receipts, and overlapping calendar entries was dropped off at the coat check, labeled for Emily's boss. There were no confrontations, no scenes, just a quiet seed, passed hand to hand. A truth that was about to unravel faster than anyone in that room could prepare for. 30 minutes in, the slideshow began, images of the firm's recent accomplishments, employee milestones, photos from conferences and retreats. Emily took the stage briefly to welcome everyone and thank the sponsors. She was glowing, polished, confident. I leaned against the back wall, sipping my soda. The USBs were being passed. Messages were being opened. Slack notifications pinged quietly on phones. And then I saw it. The look. It started with a whisper at one table, then another. People began glancing around. At Emily, at Mike, at me, at Laura. Mike stiffened, shifting in place. Emily's eyes darted across the room, clearly aware that something had changed but not sure what. She clutched her wine glass tighter. Her voice wavered on her final thank you. And then the lights came up. The room wasn't loud. It was silent. One of those uncomfortable, heavy silences where everyone pretends not to know something they absolutely know. That was our cue. Laura and I didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't gloat. We just turned and walked out. Slowly, carefully, without a single word. And as the door closed behind us, I heard it begin. The collapse. As Laura and I left, whispers erupted. Emily froze mid-speech, scanning the room as phones lit up and eyes turned. Mike went pale, glass slipping from his hand. The silence was louder than any accusation. Screens showed photos, receipts, timestamps, everything. Emily's polished world unraveled in front of colleagues, clients, friends. Her composure cracked. She'd built a stage and now she was drowning on it. Afterward, Emily didn't beg. She accused, said I was worse than any man she'd known, offered a silent divorce and cash to keep quiet. I agreed, vanished, moved states, but I took the evidence. In her files, I uncovered encrypted messages, backdoor deals. It wasn't just cheating, it was leverage, corporate fraud. She'd used our marriage as a shield, and I wasn't her only cover. What I found next changed everything.